What's up, everyone? We're back here on Mythic Conversations. It's been a hot minute since I've been here. I took a couple weeks off, took a little vacation to really super northwest Montana. Very, very far up. Absolutely wonderful environments up there in Glacier National Park. Was great to get away for a little while. It was actually my first trip in about 4 years that I didn't take my computer with me. So needless to say, I was excited once I was back to get right back into the swing of things, because there's a lot of cool stuff that's been happening. We had the test shot sales. That actually happened the week before I left. But there was a test shot sale that happened while I was away. Silver Knights arrived and those started shipping. So a lot of cool stuff. And of course, I knew that when I got back, that Friday was going to get to drop a Figura Obscura teaser. We had what has traditionally been our fall Figura Obscura. We did it a little bit earlier this year than we have in past years, because to be honest, you never know what to expect from Figura Obscura. Just when you think you know the pattern or you know what's coming, we're going to surprise you. But we did drop a brand new Figura Obscura. Of course, we are talking about the Jersey Devil, the first ever cryptid in the Figura Obscura line. So, like we do with every single Figura Obscura drop, we are here tonight on Mythic Conversations talking about this new release. And joining me to do that is none other than Eric Treadaway. Eric, hello. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's like, it's only a few times a year that we get to do, this particular show. So it's always exciting when that time rolls around again. And yeah, like you said, it's a little earlier in the season than past fall drops, but that's okay.
And I love that it's become, we talk about it being part of the tradition, and it's so funny because Figura Obscura feels like it's such a well-oiled machine, and it is, but I love how much of it happened organically. We talk about this probably almost with every drop, how, the Dork Lair doing the reviews, the teaser on the day before. These are all things that we never sat down and said, this is what we're going to do. We did it, and it worked so well that it kind of was like another layer onto what has become the Figura Obscura kind of rollout process. And that of course ends or includes this show here on Mythic Conversations. We've been fortunate that we've been able to get together after quite a few of the drops. I maybe Krampus and Headless Horseman might have been the only two that we didn't do this, because I know we did it certainly for Father Christmas Fall.
I guess that is the case. Yeah. I mean, which for me, it just strikes me as strange as, how many figures we actually have under our belt at this point, how many years this has been going for, because it with so few figures, it still feels very new and very fresh.
Yep.
But it's, it's become an established line at this point. And that, like you said, like you're talking about, like all, the traditions that go along with the release are established and, a well-known part of the event now.
I will say that there is one thing that I am very disappointed about with this release. I'm very disappointed that I didn't realize that it was our 12th release and we didn't find a way to cram another one in before it. Because part of the lore of the Jersey Devil is that it's the 13th child of Mother Leeds. We were so close to this being the 13th Figura Obscura.
Now, are you counting
No
Anubis and Bastet separately?
Yes, so I'm counting them separately, but I'm not counting retailer versions as unique figures. Like every one of them counts for one. So there's one Headless Horseman, not two, even though there are two versions of the Headless Horseman. But I did include both Anubis and Bastet because they are individual characters, individual figures, and even individual packages.
So we'll include the retailer program as a release.
Okay.
And then we're set. We're back.
We're set.
Back to where you want to be.
Back to where, there we go. Well, one thing we talk about on the Figura Obscura drop shows, or these shows, I should say, all the time is the list. That fabled list that we have of potential future Figura Obscura releases, and what gets actually moved from that list into the actual the ZBrush program that brings it to life and eventually becomes a figure. Since the very beginning, cryptids have been on that list. Since we've been talking about Figura Obscura, and we've said literature, holiday traditions, mythology, cryptozoology, and cryptids were always part of that list. And a big challenge for the last few years was figuring out where the right spot to drop the first one was, and then, of course, which one to do. You've known since the beginning that we were going to do cryptids. What was kind of the process of getting this first one in, and, of course, it being the hometown monster, the Jersey Devil?
Well, that aspect certainly didn't hurt when picking the first one. That's an interesting road that this one's taken, because cryptids have been on the list since the very beginning. I mean, and even I think back to Krampus, although Krampus is not a cryptid, like that figure even feels a bit cryptid-like to me. Like the design of it has some similar elements and similar look. So for me, like the template of the line like really lent itself to cryptids from day one. But it was also something that was so heavily asked for early on, we didn't want to jump to it immediately, because part of the fun for us is keeping the line unpredictable, and also I like, as we saw with a lot of the comments and a lot of the requests once we showed this, once we let the first one loose, I suspected we would be getting a lot of requests for more, and cryptids are such it's such a strong like subgenre of types of characters that we could do here, that I don't know, I wasn't sure if we wanted to uncork that just yet early on, especially before we established what Figura could be, because we knew like the type of variety and the type of subject matter that we wanted to tackle. And I was also just fearful, like if we did a cryptid early on, that the line could have been just pegged as a cryptid line, which it's certainly it's not. It's part of it, but not what it is.
Well, and we struggled with that early on with the holiday aspect, because because there was a point where everyone was like, they're going to do the Easter Bunny, they're going to do a leprechaun, and neither of the Easter Bunny's not on the list. I'm going to just spoil everyone's hopes right now. Not to say that he couldn't be on the list, but that was never the idea. It was never, hey, this is a holiday line. Or I say never, kind of it was at first, because when Jim first talked about it, it was like, hey, we want to have a cool holiday release. But it very quickly became more than just, hey, this is only for holidays. But because of the nature of Krampus, Headless Horseman, Father Christmas, very early on, we had to fight against, in marketing, we had to fight against that perception that it is a holiday line. So I see exactly what you're saying there, that we wanted to make sure we didn't kind of set expectations improperly. But yeah, I mean, cryptids, there's so many to choose from, and it's been one of those things that people have requested for a long time. But one of the things that I always found very interesting is you have people requesting cryptids, but then everyone seems to have kind of their own favorite cryptid, like whether it's a hometown connection or whether it's some other reason. So we see a lot of requests for Bigfoot and Mothman and the Loch Ness Monster. And, those are some of the more well-known ones that are out there. But that's one thing I always found interesting, is how everybody seems to have their favorite cryptid, the one that's at the top of their wish list.
Right. I mean, yeah, like anything else in fandom, everybody's got their favorite. And there's so many, and they're so diverse. And some fit what would make a good action figure, more clearly than that's more obvious or more clear than maybe some others. Jersey Devil is a very, I used to hear the word tossed around a lot when we were working at Mattel, like it's very toyetic character. It certainly fits. Fits the world of Figura that we've been doing so far. It fits the aesthetic. Close enough to Mythic, or a lot of the things that our fans are into. And in this particular case, kind of going back to your question, a lot of times when when we know that a figure, it's time, if it's been on the cusp, sometimes it's when the right pieces are all of a sudden available.
Yeah.
And that, that was the case.
Yep.
Here. Yeah, as I always say with Figura, like there's a lot of elements that come together with the decision, and it's just these bits and pieces that are floating around all of a sudden like start to converge, and then all the right circumstances come together, and then that makes the decision easy when the time comes.
A lot to unpack with what you just mentioned there, but let's start with the Jersey Devil, that creature, that character, or however you want to refer to it. It is a character that I mentioned: Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, Mothman. Those are probably some of the most popular cryptids. Jersey Devil is one that we, especially the members of the studio in New Jersey, are very familiar with. But similar to like what happened when we did Mask of the Red Death and Edgar Allan Poe, I grew up reading Edgar Allan Poe. He's got a connection to Providence, Rhode Island, and so forth. But it was surprising to me when like our friends from overseas, from like the Euro Legions podcast and so forth, were very unfamiliar with Edgar Allan Poe. And I think we see a little bit of that here with the Jersey Devil as well. He is a popular cryptid, but he hasn't reached the level of widespread, kind of recognition as, say, a Bigfoot. What you see here on the screen on the left, that is the most famous depiction of the Jersey Devil. It is from a 1909 newspaper clipping where that was an artist's rendition of someone's eyewitness account. And if you've ever seen this, it is a really wacky looking character. It's incredibly spindly legs, a neck that's almost giraffe-like, and then the head has been described as horse-like or goat-like, and this one here is just very goofy kind of looking. So tell us a little bit about starting with this most famous illustration, as well as the other descriptions and stuff that you saw, and how that kind of led you to your design for this particular character.
Yeah, this was a very like a different case, I felt like, than some of the other figuras, in that I don't know, thinking back to Ghost of Christmas Past, there have been so many renditions of that character over the years. There's been illustrations, stage plays, musicals, animated versions, Muppets versions, a little bit of everything there. And so on a piece like that, it was about looking at the original text, which is very specific. It was written by an author, and that was his vision of what the character was. And then from there, it was interpretations by these, various illustrators and such on it. And so with that, it was looking at all this material and distilling it down to what our version of Ghost of Christmas Past was. Here, you're talking about a character, creature that is from legend. It's from these scant sightings and descriptions and things like that. And then, so like you mentioned, this is the most famous illustration of the Jersey Devil, and there's several renditions of it out there, but I just didn't feel like the search for reference material, inspiration, was quite the same as some of the other ones who have been doing. And so, I use this in a lot of the verbal description, and also just some of where where it's thought that some of these descriptions or sightings could have actually come from, and so if we're starting with that image as a starting point and thinking about something that's Legion's build system compatible, there's nothing about that fits. So it's so for me, it was that was the fun part, was taking those descriptions and figuring out how with our parts, how with our joint system and all that, how do we make it work. So again, to what I kind of mentioned before, how do we get that lanky look? Up until a certain point, that was something we couldn't really get to, but now we have a lot more parts that could get us there. So looking at that that particular image there, the head, to me, the head and the wings are the two things that are the most that's the most prominent features of it. And that head, like you mentioned, that was described as a horse. I saw a lot with hooves, the forked kind of barbed tail, bat wings, and so it's a very awkward mishmash of parts, but I like that. To me, that's what's interesting about it. It's a bizarre thing, and that's what that plays into what cryptids are. There's these strange, unsettling sightings, and that's what I like about the way this ended up. It's an unsettling creature.
Yes.
It looks almost unbalanced.
Yes.
Oh, and one thing so with the head, though, one thing that was really cool about that is there were a lot of descriptions of it saying horse head, but when I was reading it through, one of the things that that came up, and that was a theory of what people thought the Jersey Devil might have been, was that there's a type of bat that's, I believe it's called a hammerhead bat, I think. Oh, you are ready to go. um, and so when I was kind of not really struggling, but like, I was kind of starting off with the horse head and stuff, and just like waiting for something to click, like where it got weirder, or like it, became a little more unique. And when I read that, and that,
yeah,
like that kind of set it off for me, because I look at this, and if you look at one with the full body, the theory was that somehow one of these was on a boat and made its way over to the United States. And when you look at it, it's got, little legs, it's got the wings. I could very easily see where somebody could have seen that, and that description turned into the next description into the next, and all of a sudden you've got the Jersey Devil. I look at that face and I look at that illustration, and I could easily see it. And so just the bizarreness of that, that bat's head, like, really was kind of, it almost like gave me the permission to, to get a little stranger with it.
They're big too, if I remember correctly. Hammerhead bats are very large bats.
Yeah, it's almost like a dog with wings. Like, it's especially, and then again, like if you look at one of those, it's got a massive head, and which is like on this illustration here. Yes. And so again, it's like, it's awkward, like it's unnatural. So like that was the sort of thing, like I really just grabbed onto that weirdness and went for it.
Yeah. Well, that's the inspiration for, but you mentioned also about kind of having the right parts, and there's a point where sometimes we have to hold something off because we don't have the parts in the library that we're ready to use, but that we know they're coming. So we might hold something off for that. Talk to us a little bit about the parts that we see here. There's certainly some new parts. There's some parts that were in the library, but there's a number of parts that, even though they've been done for the library, we're seeing them in hand for the first time.
Yeah. I'll just go bottom to top and go through it. It's always fun to do a parts breakdown, and it's different. It's so much different than it used to be, because the library is so much bigger than it was for years and years. Like, where we're pulling from is so varied compared to compared to those old days. I mean, we got Mythic, we've got Cosmic, we've got Figura. This figure has parts from all three of those in it. But again, if we start at the bottom, the hooves are new. The, I guess, lower leg section is from Wendaje. The middle leg section is new, because Wendaje's got the mid cut in the calf with the wraps. Knee and thighs from Wendaje. The kind of crotch, sleeve, diaper, whatever you want to call that, that's new. The tail's new. And then the torso, the upper arms are directly from Frankenstein. Then the torso, lower arms, and hands were developed at the same time as Frankenstein, which essentially they are like developed the Frankenstein figure, and really just loved that lanky build and that, what it was bringing to the table. And so went in and revised those to, to turn into these. And although they look very similar, like even the torso, it's like Frankenstein's torso has it's asymmetrical, it's twisted. There's some different skin textures in it and things like that, where this is a more straight up and down, like very universal usage torso. And then so like when I did that crotch piece, like that was like that sort of stuff. Like that's almost like a fun like figuring out a puzzle sort of a thing, because it's like, all right, well, we've got the Windage thighs, we've got this fleshy torso, you know, how do we make a piece that seamlessly transitions those two and gives us that kind of, because I wanted that almost like satyr look where it was like the flesh on the top and then the hairy legs and then you know the hairy upper, which again for me, like if you're going for the creepier look, like that sells it more with that dark kind of shiny skin against the fur, as opposed to just, you know, if you do all fur, like it's almost potentially like more cuddly. I don't know if you could consider this cuddly in any way, but then the neck is brand new, and the head and that entire assembly. And of course, there's two heads there. The weapons and accessories are existing from Cosmic and from Mythic, and of course the wings are our classic Arethyr wings, but really like shown in a way here, like we've never used those wings before. And that was, that sold me on, using those wings here, is the fact that we were able to get such a rich look out of those, and just, it looks different from shot to shot, and then different different light sources and all that.
They almost feel the wings, when you see the wings, you almost expect that they're going to be rubbery, because they have that semi-translucency. Some people are jokingly calling them root beer barrel wings, but the idea is, I mean, it does kind of have almost that semi-translucency that you would see in that candy. They really do look like they're membranes, and you touch it and you almost expect it to be soft and kind of spongy in a way.
Yeah. I mean, it really, it's convincing, and almost it's deceptive almost.
It is, for sure. I love you were talking about that transition from the skin to the fur. That is an unsettling piece. Like right there, you mentioned satyr and everything. That, I think, is one of the parts that sells that unsettling aspect, along with the really oversized head with like the big furry neck. Those proportions, it gives it a really unnatural type of silhouette that, again, if you look at that original art of the Jersey Devil, there's some differences here to make it work really well in action figure form. But I feel that the creepy, unnatural shapes of that original description are captured here in the figure as well.
Yeah. I like cryptids, when I think about them, when I was working on this and stuff, I can't help but think back to X-Files. And they certainly had a number of cryptids on that show, and that was, for me, that was my first exposure to some of those. And that was one of the things I always liked on that show, is that they presented them in like again I keep using the word, but in like a very unsettling way, especially it's a whole show dealing with the concept of this stuff is actually real, or is it actually real? And that's just like, for me, that just kind of is, there is just that unnatural kind of, really horror element to a lot of the cryptids.
One of the hardest things about this figure, after you got your design down and everything, and we were looking at it and we started having the conversation about accessories, because this, being Figura Obscura, is a line that we have really thrown all caution to the wind when it comes to accessorizing figures. This is coming on the tail end of Ganesha, that I love Ganesha leading into this, because they could not be two more different types of characters and approaches in terms of the subject matter and the overall presentation and the palette and all that. But Ganesha is so loaded out with parts because that character lent itself well to that. One of the challenges with the Jersey Devil was there's nothing in any of the lore that lends itself to accessories. And, even like we've done a lot of diorama style items lately, doing like trees or something like that. It was certainly something that we talked about, but in the end, we felt like we were forcing those accessories into the set, as opposed to it being very organic that they should be included. We did look into the library to do, some bones and stuff. Certainly imagined that this character would, have a lair littered in the bones of its victims. And then we threw a stand in there as well. Just someone was talking about flight poses might be nice for the Jersey Devil, so a stand would help with that. But that was definitely one of the challenges, I think, with this, is figuring out what to include beyond the figure itself.
Well, I mean, I think if you've ever heard me talk about this stuff, I love my Dio pieces with these things. It's that now we're doing it, and we've done it in Cosmic. We've added it to Mythic recently. I enjoy that stuff tremendously. And kind of like you said, it was kind of a couple of things here. One is that the inspiration was just not hitting. Like, there wasn't something that we found in the research or anything like that was just like, yeah, that's it. Let's throw this in. But we also had a little uncertainty with this one, just from, maintaining a price point and everything like that, because, the wings are very large. Everybody who has the wings, already knows the size of the wings. And we wanted to throw a stand in with this too, just because this was the first time we were using the double jointed tooling. And at the point where we're actually planning this figure and everything, we just wanted to have a safety net there. The good news is, very early, as this was moving along, we started seeing how those double knees and all the joints are working together and stuff, which is fantastic. But we already had the base in there, and with the wings, with the multi-jointed legs, with the potential to put it in a flight pose, things like that. I'm actually very happy that we included that base in there. I think it's just a nice bonus with that figure. And I think just kind of looking at the line as a whole, we've had a lot of figures recently where that Dio piece really makes a lot of sense for a particular figure, but it's not the standard for the line either. You look back, Krampus, Headless Horseman, Monkey King, even like a lot, accessories there, but not a Dio piece.
No.
And so I never, much like a lot of this line, I never want to squeeze something in just for the sake of squeezing it in. Here, the focus was on the figure. Jersey Devil, such a strong character and kind of a simple character compared, you mentioned Ganesh, or I just mentioned Monkey King. Like those are characters with like these ornate outfits and stuff. This one, the simplicity of it is a lot of the appeal. It's almost like a walking silhouette or shadow. So it's and again, of course, it is part of that that unpredictability too. Like you don't know if it's going to be a soft goods figure, if it's going to be a Dio figure,
Yep.
if it's going to be big, small, who knows.
So we do have a very hard-hitting question from our good friend Dorklair, is asking, was the stand color based on the color of your walls? Did not realize that connection literally until Bill asked it.
Not purposely, but I mean, you'll find that color in a lot of stuff we do. So, my tastes carry over to the walls of my studio.
We have another question here from Mr. Ryan Clark. Says, does the stand support the figure's weight in a flying pose long term? I always liked full horseman figure stands for what they lack. I mean, they take up a lot of room. They have a large footprint. They're not very sleek stands, but I've never personally found a stand that supports figures in wacky positions long term as well as these do. I have a number of stands in my collection where characters in big flying poses, and a lot of my customs actually. So figures that I really don't want to come crashing down because they've got 3D printed parts. And I've never had a problem with over time them sagging or anything like that. So Ryan, I definitely think you'll be set with this in a flying pose long term.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they're not the most hidden stands around, but like I use these on other figures I've got in the studio, and I feel like if a figure goes on one of these stands, it's a guarantee that I'm not going to have to be concerned about it. They're locked in, and it's nice too because like I've got a Kurzog in here on it. I've got an old Ramathor figure on it, like some large figures that it holds them, holds them up well too, and they are great for flying and floating poses and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that.
I love them too for like shows, like whether we're talking about Legion's Con or, any of the shows that we do where we have stuff on display, because those tables get bumped frequently when you're at shows, and you don't want to be picking stuff up off the floor every, 30 minutes because someone bumped into the table. So the stability that they offer as well, again, it's in exchange for kind of that heavier footprint. Certainly, if you're looking for stands to disappear in your display, these are probably not the ones you're going to go for. But if you're more concerned with just, hey, I want more of a museum style kind of approach where my figures are going to be locked in that pose and that's what I want, they're not going to move, I think these do a great job. Looking at one of the wonderful photos we have here that Trevor took, once again, talk about the kind of the hallmarks of a Figura Obscura drop. Trevor doing that photograph and capturing this character. I mentioned earlier being in his lair littered with skulls, and he threw some skulls in there from the Mythic Legions line, some skeleton parts, but really kind of shows you a potential scene for this creature from the Pine Barrens.
Yeah. I mean, and this is always like, that's one of the things I'm always excited about with Figura is, generally on a character, we get a single environmental shot from Trevor. On Figura, we get an entire little set of pictures. So like I enjoy seeing, like, him putting the figures in different environments, and I don't know, just it's a just an abundance of goodness when we start seeing the Trevor shots for this stuff.
Yep. Yeah, I love it. It's something that I do whenever Trevor is shooting a lot of stuff. Like, so in this case, he's not shooting a lot of things, but he's taking a lot of shots because, like you just said, he's going to do multiple environment shots. When he's doing, a full mythic or cosmic wave, we get an environment shot for every character plus turns, but we also get, 5 or 6 or 7 figures. So I love that because it becomes one of the things I do every morning, where every morning I wake up and I go to Dropbox and I check to see if Trevor uploaded any new photos. And specifically with Figura Obscura, a lot of times when I see something new, I'll download it and then immediately send it to you. And it's become one of those things that I get really excited for, because we've talked about this, that there's this point where we can't talk to anybody about this. Like, our circle of people we can share our excitement with is so incredibly limited until we reveal it. So any little bit of being able to share a photo and talk about it is very welcome at those early stages of this process.
Yeah. One thing I just noticed on that, like that shot shows off the range of motion on the knees.
Oh yeah.
Well, so that's a nice little teaser for folks. Sure.
Yeah, you see it here. This was the first shot that we shared with the reveals, kind of that. We've got that teaser that goes up on Friday. Then on Saturday, this was the first shot. And this was actually, I think, the first environment shot Trevor did for this particular one. Kind of this misty type look at the creature. It's got the more passive, for lack of a better term, head on it as well. But again, you kind of see that left leg there, how it really, the combination of the double knee and then the added little bit, it's got that added bit on the ankle that's extra articulation points, and it really allows you to get some very cool poses with those legs.
Yeah. I mean, just, now that we've actually had some of the different, 3.0 test shots, mm-hmm. and now, production in the studio, it's, it's all working really well, but it's a lot of fun. Like, yeah. It's the posing, possibilities. I don't know. It's, it's a new dimension for the line. You can just push those, especially on like a figure like this, where there's, it's not an armor piece and it's anatomy. Mm-hmm. To be able to get those deep bends in the knees, and so we've had some other pieces around with the the butterflies and the mid waist and stuff like that. Like, it's all working well, and yeah, I mean, just, I don't know, just getting those little extra bits of gesture and stuff. I think people are going to enjoy it when they get it in hand.
For sure. One of the comments I saw a lot of people make is, looking at this particular figure really made people start wondering what a new Krampus would look like. And it's very interesting because you mentioned earlier, you said Krampus felt at this point like a Figura light because of the treatment of it. And that's where Figura was in those earliest days, where it was like, hey, we're going to add a couple new pieces, but we're going to use a full mythic body. And to that point, Krampus is wearing armor. I mean, but the line as a whole, for years, every figure had some kind of armor. The waist, the construction of that waist required that waist armor piece to kind of close that up. And the first time we saw a solution to not using an armored waist was with the Ghost of Christmas Past from the Figura line, where we had that little kind of almost looks like underwear, but that piece that covers that essential gap. And then we see it here as well. And I think that's a good thing to point out is, we're not seeing compromises on this Jersey Devil where we had to use armored parts because that's what we had available. And this is one of really our first figures that really has no armor of any kind on it. This is a purely organic character, which I think is a very cool spot to be at in the line, not only for Figura, but knowing that Figura so often becomes a springboard for other things we can do in Mythic and Cosmic as well.
That's actually that's actually a very interesting point. Like, I know that that's something that I, have been working toward as we've been building pieces up. But yeah, this might be the first one that's like fully clothing and armor free.
Yeah, because you've got a figure like Marley. Marley has no armor on,
Right.
but he's fully clothed. It's not.
Right.
Even the zombies. You look at the zombies and they've got waist armor and stuff, or Mask of the Red Death. Mask of the Red Death has the wraps around its waist and stuff. This is the first one that I can remember that is really purely organic.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, we slowly been getting there for forever. You had the armored lower leg, the from mid forearm down, actually even hands and feet. Like early on, it was all like those, like even like the fact that we didn't have flesh hands and like bare feet, like that was a long time before.
Long time coming, yeah.
So I mean, this is a long way from those early days.
So Eric, we do have someone calling us out. Well, not calling us out. That would be the wrong way to say it. But someone pointing out that Skeleton Legion Builder 2, if you count no flesh also. So yeah, I mean, that's a good point. The Skeleton Legion Builder 2, or I mean, Maxilius came with a lot of stuff on him, but you could strip him down to be the pure skeleton. Yeah. I guess that in a different way would be the first fully unarmored figure we've done.
Good point. Yeah. Then I mean, but even that one's a great, example of the same thing. Like early on, we could make a skeleton with very few skeletal parts, and then slowly, skeleton hands, skeleton feet, to the point where, like now we've made it to where, you look at like those graveyard skeletons, you got a pack of just skeletons. Yeah. So it's, just speaks to just how much expansion we've been able to do on the line, like how far, we've been able to come over the years, which is amazing. It's, it just allows us on our end to do so much more than, with those parts at our disposal.
Without a doubt. So changing gears a little bit, one of the other aspects that Figura Obscura is always known for is the art that comes as part of this. And interestingly, this particular Figura Obscura was a bit of a change for us when it came to the art, because up until this particular release, Nate Barch had done every single piece of art for the Figura Obscura releases. But this project fell out of time because Figura Obscura is one of those projects where we have very tight deadlines. Like once Chris says we need the stuff, we've got to deliver that stuff because we've got to maintain that schedule to hit the spot on our calendar where we want this to drop. So Nate had a couple other projects that he needed to get done. And we've been, probably for well over a year now, working with a gentleman named Tom Tolman. Tom's been doing a bunch of art for us. He actually did the inside panel on the Ganesha release. Did a bunch of stuff on the Necro wave as well. But this was one where Nate did some concept art. Nate actually did do like the straight up Jersey Devil portrait that you see on the t-shirt and sweatshirt. And then Tom did the rest of the art here. So that was very cool to kind of sit back and see Tom do some work and Nate kind of art direct that. And the two of them together kind of put together this approach and this art here, some of which you see right here. We've got the box itself that's in the center. I just mentioned that t-shirt and sweatshirt. Those are available, of course, from Retro Rags Limited. And then we've got the mug and the pin set there. That pin set has art. The front shot was art done by Nate. The side view was Tom. And then interestingly, that actually pin art was drawn by Pat Busey of the Glios community. So 3 different artists have their hands in that pin set there.
Yeah, this is, there's another aspect of Figura that's always just really adds to the release is the fact that we've, it's a multiple aspects here, actually. I mean, because it's, it's decked out in art on the package, where it's, we get to tell some of the story with it. We get to depict different scenes from, whether it be a story or legend or whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's been great pulling Tom into the fold because it's just gotten to the point where there's too much art for Nate to handle. It's just been the nature of things. So Tom's been able to come in and lend his talents to us, and when you get this box in hand, like it's going to speak for itself. Like he did some great things with this, and then to be able to take the art that Tom does, that Nate does, and then pull it into the pins, the shirts, the mugs. It's just it all comes together to make Figura what it is. It makes that Figura drop so special.
Yeah, it's funny because I'll admit when we first started talking about, because there was that point where we said, okay, we've got to assign something to Tom. Nate can't do all of this. And when the idea of the Jersey Devil going to Tom got brought up, I initially was like kind of against it. And that wasn't a knock on Tom. It was me genuinely being like, no, I love Figura Obscura, like this combination of, Eric's doing the sculpting and creating the figure and all of this, and I'm writing all this content and Nate's doing the art. It's something that we had since the first one that I wrote something for was Headless Horseman. So since the second release, that's been the process. And I love it. I love it so much that I was almost hesitant for somebody else to kind of step into that role. And what I ended up loving about Tom's art is it's different than Nate's, but it still felt very Figura Obscura. Like it really felt like it wasn't, you see this in comics sometimes or whatever, where they change artists and it's such a dramatic change that you got to get used to that change. I felt like if we didn't tell people this wasn't Nate who painted this, I don't know that people would readily have noticed that. So it felt like it was distinctly Tom, but he understood the assignment and did such a great job of capturing that Figura Obscura feel.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, Nate has been so much part of the brand and so associated with the visual identity of of all of all the lines we're doing, but, specifically there could be, again, because there's so much art with Figura and it's so art forward, it was a little bit nerve wracking to just the idea of taking Nate off of it or having him splitting art duties or whatever. Yeah. And so, when we realized it was a need, like it wasn't something where we just wanted to pull somebody in. Like we asked Nate to bring somebody in because it had to be somebody that, that Nate could work with, could speak the same creative language, and Nate had known Tom for years, and I feel like I always say like Nate for me is easy to work with when we're working on art because he he will pick up where I leave off, and I feel like when he's working with Tom, it's very much the same way. Like those guys, they're just in sync. So it's worked out really well, because there is just more and more art that we need. So to have a guy come in like Tom that can, can handle the the needs and then go above and beyond what we're asking has been a great add.
Amazing, yeah. And I mean, we should also note as we're talking about Nate that today is actually Nate's birthday.
That's
so
right.
Happy birthday, Nate. I'm sure he's not watching this live. He's hopefully out with family enjoying his birthday. But if you catch on the replay crew, Nate, happy birthday.
Indeed, happy birthday.
Staying on the topic of art, without a doubt, as cool as all this art is, this piece was the piece of art that just totally blew me away. And this particular one, it's funny. What you're actually seeing is the original box insert. It got bigger because towards the end of the process, we realized that the Jersey Devil was so big, it wouldn't actually fit in a standard Figura Obscura box. And we had to upsize it to the same size box that Ganesha came in. And artists love nothing more than when you go to them and say, hey, all that art you did, we need it to be different dimensions now. We need you to expand it and add more art around it. But Tom did it wonderfully. So the one that actually comes in the box is less of a square and more of a rectangle because he had to add to the sides a little bit. Amazingly, Dorklair pointed out that insert piece, which really does lend itself to being framed, is 11 by 17, which is a very standard picture frame size.
Yeah. There's a lot of frame-worthy art that comes out of these projects, but I could definitely see this one. It seems like the sort of thing that people would be very comfortable putting up in their home, even maybe not in their their toy space. You can kind of maybe sneak it into the living room, if you couldn't normally do that.
So I actually do have it here. I'll bring this down for a second. So I do have, one here, and, obviously it's got this bottom flap, which, you can just kick up, and it's got these creases that are in it because the way it's supposed to fold. But it's interesting because when you flatten it out, they almost kind of disappear. Or if you see them at all, it just kind of looks like an old map that would have been folded anyway. Like a lot of these nautical maps or whatever it was, they were folded or rolled. So I think this is going to be great. 11 by 17. I know I'm going to be framing this for sure.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
I do love that it looks like an old folded map. That's. Normally those creases I could see where it bugged people, but here it's perfect.
They really do blend into the piece itself in a way that I think a lot of our other inserts, it wouldn't be as seamless. All right, let's see what else we've got here. One interesting aspect of this figure, or maybe not the figure, but at least the character of the Jersey Devil, is beyond this toy. The Jersey Devil's been a character that's been kind of had a bit of a presence in the studio for a little time now because of this. So there's a play in New Jersey, or actually I think it's playing outside of New Jersey as well, but certainly in New Jersey, called The Devil in Daisy Dirt. And it is a play that actually does feature the Jersey Devil, and our very own Dan Diana is in that costume there. This costume was actually designed by Dan and Bill Mancuso, the two that, if you know Four Horsemen Studios, are behind all of those giant statues that we bring to Legion's Con, and also the dioramas. They're doing all the dia work these days. So, Eric, tell us a little bit about the Devil in Daisy Dirt in this particular interpretation of the Jersey Devil that Dan and Bill put together.
Yeah, it is interesting just how much presence the Jersey Devil has had around the studio at the time when we were developing this. Yeah, like so I first started seeing bits and pieces of this around the shop when Bill and Dan were working on it, and learn more about the production and
Mhm.
and like seeing like little parts of it and kind of like the idea of how it was going to come together, and then seeing the costume in its entirety was absolutely incredible. Like this thing, I mean, if you came across Dan in this costume, like in an alley,
Crazy.
or in the woods or whatever, you would be terrified.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of got like a little bit of puppeteering in it, but it's also a costume, and it's part. So it's like you said, it's part of a play kind of. I mean, I would almost say play / experience. It's cool. They take the show around like to different locations.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe at one point they did it in a church. They've done versions of it where it was more outdoors. And so like the experience changes a little bit. When I went and saw it, it was in a pretty small room, so it was a very intimate I want to use the word experience rather than show, because it felt very much more like you were witnessing something rather than sitting in an audience and just sitting back and watching the show. And it was the whole the production, the acting, the presentation, everything about it is so well done, and it pulls from a lot of the Jersey Devil legend and like some local legend as far as a local restaurant down in the Pine Barrens called Lucille's, and like it's something for me. I'm terrible at verbalizing anyway, but like it's hard to kind of describe the whole thing, but very, very cool though. And this costume, seeing it actually but Dan perform it and be part of the storytelling, everything, it's really cool. And they have done a great job of you're seeing it here on the cover of Weird New Jersey, which I think it might be go past New Jersey, but I know like it's a New Jersey staple where they cover all kinds of weird goings on, local legends, things like that. And so they were able to really like kind of do the Jersey circuit with this, with the promo for it. But if this is if you're in New Jersey, or anywhere if they travel outside and you happen to see this, it's definitely worth going and checking out the show.
So check this out. Steph's in the comments and she says, amazingly creepy and well-written show. I caught the show at a barn in the Pine Barrens this year. How cool is that? Like seeing it at a barn actually in the Pine Barrens. That's cool. Yeah, that's got to be very, very cool.
I mean, that's what Dan showed me some of the other locations that they've done it in, and they've played this in some really cool spots, in somewhat unusual, unorthodox spots as well. It's not like always like you're going to your local playhouse and seeing this, which I think it brings it ups the the immersive quality of it, especially I mean being at the seeing it at the Pine Barrens must have been great. That's awesome.
So cool. So cool. So I did have a question here about the figure itself. So someone's asking, is the neck piece on the Jersey Devil the same as Windaji the Cackler? I don't
No,
believe it is. No, it's new.
it's very similar. It's
Yeah.
very similar to it, but um, my original plan was to use that, but it just did not. I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't remember exactly what part of it didn't work, but it just from a technical standpoint just didn't quite line.
Yeah.
Oh, that maybe that's what it was.
The wings.
That
So
might yeah.
the headpiece itself, I should say the headpiece, the neck piece, it's got these two, and I'm gonna embiggen myself real quick. You can see it's got like the two holes in the back where the wings would plug in. Windaji not having wings, I have to imagine doesn't require that. So
He's when Dodgy has
pauldrons,
the pauldrons, but just the way that everything worked, yeah, it just required a little bit different. One thing that is nice now that I forgot about that, the fact that the wings actually push through there. There's a little actual that neck piece provides a little extra grip.
Yep.
On the wings, so that it's just a little bit more surface for them to hold on to, which is always nice when those big heavy wings are on a figure like that.
For sure. Absolutely. Bill, I know in his review kind of kicked the wings back like that to get that, that kind of portrait there with the wings and back. And it's, yeah.
The profile, like really, you holding it up there, like I think that, you see a lot of what's going on with the figure with that profile, because it's not only is there's a lot of like forward motion to that head and neck, which on the docile head gives it a little bit more of the creepy kind of unusual look, but with the aggressive head, it really pulls that entire demeanor forward where it looks aggressive.
Yeah. And this is another example. We've spoken about this a few different times recently with some different figures where, as opposed to creating a figure with an articulated jaw to really get the most out of the sculptural details, two different heads, two different expressions. So it's not just a hinged jaw that opens, but you were able to really treat that whole face and the nose area, how it would look in this kind of, growling. There's a lot of the descriptions of the Jersey Devil talk about it screaming, which you look at this head and is it a roar? Is it a howl or whatever? The concept of it screaming, just that word scream, it's so chilling just thinking about that, being in the darkness of the Pine Barrens and hearing this thing screaming.
Yeah, again, I just keep going, going back to these words like unnatural. Like it's just, hearing like, I don't know, roar, I think more like, oh, it's like, what is a mountain lion roaring or tiger or something like that. But like I picture with, like on this, like something more otherworldly that like you wouldn't even know how to place it or what to do with a noise like that. And like like you said, it again, the no, not just doing an articulated jaw, but just so that the idea of this, that like just pushing the expression so much further than a hinged jaw would do.
Yeah, that's, again, like I said, we've talked about that recently. Windaji is another example. We're talking about some parts shared with Windaji or not shared. He's another character. And I've loved that approach, the fact that we get those extra heads. And it's interestingly, because you talked earlier about it took us a while to get bare hands into the line and stuff like that, or unarmored parts in this particular case. Even that was a long time request that I know you were excited to finally be able to get in, is not only alternate heads, but alternate expressions. Because early on, a lot of the figures came with two heads, but they were like, I think about a character like Orn Steelhide. Orn had two distinctly different heads. It wasn't like the same head in two different poses, two different expressions. So we've seen a lot more of that recently, where it's clearly the same character, but at different moments in time. And I think that gives so many more display options for people in their displays.
Yeah, I mean, being able to switch the hands out, switch the heads out. Sometimes, you might, if it's an armored character, pauldrons, no pauldrons.
Yep.
Like, it's just, I mean, anytime within a single package, like a single item, where you've got multiple display options, that's a great bonus, a great way to be able to present it.
And interestingly, I don't know about you, but I tend to be a passive expression in a passive pose. I love people that have really dynamic poses in their displays, but because of how much I have on display, I tend to not be able to afford to have characters that are posed like really super expressive. They've kind of got to be more of that museum kind of standing at attention. So I tend to go with passive expressions. But for my Jersey Devil, I absolutely went with the more aggressive expression. So just someone like myself that 9 times out of 10, I may prefer one thing, having the option for that figure where that's the one that I want ends up being a really nice bonus.
It is funny because I tend to pose my figures that way too. And it just strikes me as kind of funny that, basically spending just hours and hours and hours articulating these figures so they can do all kinds of crazy poses just so that they can stand like a 5-point articulated figure on the shelf. But, that's if we're not just making this for you and I. So,
yes.
But I would still do it anyway if I was. So I don't, it's a, I don't know, it's a strange phenomenon, but
it is. But the posability allows Trevor to take shots like we see here, and to really show these characters in kind of those dynamic poses. And of course, I'm saying Trevor, all of the photographers that are part of the toy photography community. And that's actually a good segue into, one of the differences with this particular Figura Obscura drop. So we talk about the process of Figura, and normally we would be at the spot right now where these had started to ship out and they're arriving in people's collections and arriving in their hands, and the toy photographers are going to start taking them out and snapping absolutely amazing photos. For this particular one, there's going to be a little bit more of a gap because other than the Monkey King, this is the only Figura that we've done that is technically not in stock. So for those that may not know, this particular one, we had expected to have this figure in stock when we made the schedule plans a year ago, but just things taking the time that they take, us not being able to move this because, well, quite frankly, there's other things on spots in the calendar that we can't move. This drop happened probably about 3 weeks before the figures are set to arrive in the studio. So it's a weird combination because it's not a pre-order in the sense of our normal Legions pre-orders where it's a certain timed window. And as long as you purchase during that timed window, you're going to get that figure. This is a pre-order, but it's what we call a fixed edition. So these are already produced. They're already on the water. They will sell out. In fact, the first drop that we did on Saturday, that sold out, I believe, towards the end of the day on Monday. But we do have another drop coming this Friday. So this Friday, which is the 29th at 11 a.m. Eastern time, the Figura Obscura Jersey Devil, along with a small number of all-ins and mugs and pins, will all be back available at storehorseman.com. So for us, Eric, I know we love seeing the toy photography photos that hit Instagram and the cabal and so forth. We're going to have to wait just a little bit longer to start seeing those this time.
Yeah, I mean that part is a little bit of a bummer, but we plan this stuff so far ahead, and being off by 3 weeks, I feel like it could be a lot worse. But when people start getting it, we start seeing those photographs. A little delayed gratification will not be a bad thing either. So I am looking forward to it. It just here it's the excitement is kind of condensed into usually a week worth of time. It'll just kind of give us a second go round when that stuff starts hitting and people start posting.
Yeah, it's without revealing too much, the news cycle is going to shift a little bit. We're going to be talking about some other stuff, and then before you know it, the Jersey Devil is going to come right back at you. He's going to start shipping. All those photos are going to start hitting, and we're going to remember again, oh, that's right. This just dropped a few weeks ago. And so while I'm bummed that we're not going to start seeing that photography this week, I kind of also am looking forward to that. Him just kind of, in I guess kind of cryptid fashion, sneaking back into the conversation when we least expect it.
Yeah. It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, love that. So a lot of other stuff happening. Silver Knights are shipping. I've been sharing some Legions con art. There's a lot of stuff going on, but so much that we could be talking about, trying to stay focused on the Jersey Devil. Are there any other, aspects of this particular figure that, you found challenging or interesting that we want to talk about tonight?
I just, we didn't really talk about the lore of this too much. There's, as we've been doing with Figura, there's, a great booklet in with the figure that delves into that. There you go. So, everybody definitely, make sure and dig into that. A lot of cool, local lore, definitely like cryptid style information there. But one of the things that I've just found amusing when getting into the backstory on this is when you put up the teaser for Frankenstein.
Yep.
It was the lightning with the key in it.
Yep. Because I always put the key in the teasers.
Yes. And so one of the first guesses that I saw was for Benjamin Franklin, which obviously was not what it was. And so then here not are now, but were whatever, a year ago, starting Jersey Devil and going through the research, and whose name pops up in the backstory for the history of Jersey Devil, but Benjamin Franklin. And if once you dig into the backstory of it, an argument could be made that Benjamin Franklin is responsible for the Jersey Devil legend.
Possible.
So a year later, you're at least a step closer to your Ben Franklin.
Yep. There wasn't a Ben Franklin connection to Figura Obscura last year at this time, although a lot of people not a lot, but some people were guessing that. But there is now a Benjamin Franklin connection to Figura Obscura for sure.
Yeah.
That was one of the most surprising aspects of the lore, because I mentioned this on the Saturday live show. Every every time we do a Figura Obscura drop, I go on there with Jonathan, Eric, and Ryan, and talk, and usually Trevor as well. Actually, Curtis was on this time too. Bill jumps on, but we talk about that particular drop, and just talking about that connection and the story with it. This was a character that I didn't know a whole lot about before we started doing this. Probably similar to Monkey King. I think Monkey King and the Jersey Devil were the two that I had the least connection to going in. But yeah, that whole story about the founding fathers and that feud between Benjamin Franklin and Titan Leeds and stuff, very amusing type anecdotes for this character.
Yeah.
I had a question here that I wanted to bring up. So Jurassic Jesse is saying, will the Jersey Devil be available at Legion's Con? This is actually an interesting question that came up during that Saturday show as well. And, what we said was we don't really know because we have a certain amount that we're set aside to sell online. We do set aside some for shows, and it's pretty safe to say that the Jersey Devil will be at Legion's Con, but there will be a limited amount. And one of the things that, they pointed out, I think Bill pointed out during the Saturday show, is he was like, anything that you can reduce the things you have to get or do at Legion's Con is a benefit. Like if you can get the Jersey Devil now, because it's going to be available on the website this weekend, the figure itself is $65. Sales tax gets added onto that, and then actually our flat rate shipping $9.99 applies as well. If you do get this at a show, it's $70 because the tax gets added at the show. So if you buy it on the show versus online, you are saving potentially a few dollars. But the challenge of going to Legion's Con, where there's going to be no shortage of other things to buy, including plenty of things that are going to be available for the first time ever at Legion's Con, and having to also add a figure of this size into that equation. Bill pointed out that do yourself a favor. If you can pick this up before Legion's Con, don't wait for Legion's Con. Get it in advance.
It makes sense. You end up walking away from a show like that with things that you didn't even expect to walk away with. So, lightening your load ahead of time is not a bad thing.
And that, I just think about the amount of stuff that we have at, the Four Horsemen store and everything, and, the Armory experience and the Legion's Con exclusives. That's not to say all of the other exhibitors that are going to be there with lots of really, really cool stuff. So yeah, Legion's Con there's no shortage of temptations, no shortage of things that are going to attack your wallet. So anything you can get in advance will certainly lighten the load from Legion's Con. With that, we are about 5 minutes left. I think we got a few minutes, Eric, that we can answer a question or two before we call it an evening.
Sure.
So if anyone has any questions, certainly about the Jersey Devil figure, that would be great, but we can potentially take some other questions as well. Thomas is mentioning, I ship a case of figures back each year. Don't need this to take the place of a few more exclusives. Absolutely. Dustin saying, I'm driving my Suburban, so I have all the space that I need. Challenge accepted. Joe was in here as well. Joe Vassapolo mentioning that so many things at Legion's Con this year. Bill reiterating, we all go to Legion's Con with a massive to-do list. You can knock that off your list right now. Very good, Bill. I appreciate that. I've answered this before, and I have fairly stringent opinions on some of this stuff, but I'm curious for your answer. Have real people been considered for Figura Obscura, like Rasputin, Jack the Ripper, Elizabeth Bathory, etc.?
I mean, I'm just trying to think through like our list. I mean, there may be some things that are on there that are questionable whether or not they're legend or real. And of course, like, I'm going to say this, but I will also say never because,
Of course.
but generally that's not where we're looking. Certainly, like Jack the Ripper, I don't think like would fit, or Elizabeth Bathory, the things that are more like real life killers and stuff like that. Like it's like less fantasy than what we're doing. I don't know, for some reason though, like in that one, like Rasputin seems interesting to me, but yeah, I mean, I like, again, I would never say never, but it's not really the type of stuff that we're looking at. I think what it kind of is that it's not fantastical enough. Like that, most of what we're doing has an element of fantasy or horror or something that's not quite natural or earthly. So Jack the Ripper doesn't really fit that.
Yeah.
So I bet, again, it could take a turn in a different direction at some point. There could be an aspect of a particular person or their persona that all of a sudden, like one of us sees in a different light and something strikes. So, but it's, I mean, it's not generally the direction.
Yeah, and I've always said that, and someone mentioned, J Mac mentioned his comments that I respect not glamorizing murderers. That's always been kind of my challenge with it, is I get uncomfortable with that idea. Like you mentioned Jack the Ripper, you mentioned Rasputin. Those are interesting because they are such shady characters or such unusual characters that they've been used as a springboard for fantastical other versions of those characters. Like those are a lot more interesting. Like the idea of Jack the Ripper not being a human murderer, but being some kind of otherworldly entity or whatever. Like once you start going down those more fictional, fantastic paths, it becomes a lot more interesting. There's a lot of other real life murderers that you couldn't make that leap with. But to your point, never say never, but not really something that we've talked a ton about for being included with this.
Yeah.
See other questions. Want to wish Tiffany a happy birthday today. Sharing a birthday with me. Very cool. So Dorclair asking, now that Translucent Wings came out so good, are you itching to revisit Clear Wings down the road? We kind of did them. We did semi-translucent with the Gold Skeleton too.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm itching to do it, but it's now that we see how well it works.
Possible, yeah.
There's a more likely that it find its way in, or we would think twice about doing it, an opaque wing on a particular character.
It's an interesting one. Someone asking if we'd ever consider selling directly from the factory in China to international buyers. Not really, because our factory is equipped to make toys. They're not really selling them direct to consumer for us. So it's kind of a square peg in a round hole type situation. Certainly, we understand the challenges with shipping internationally. This particular commenter is in Australia. We do have a wonderful retailer actually in Australia called Melbourne Coin. So I would suggest that you check them out to see if they might be able to help you out. I guess the answer is no, we're not looking to have our factory sell directly to other places like that, but we do continue to work with retailers all across the world. There are going to be some items like the Jersey Devil in question here that are our Store Horseman exclusive, and for those, we do ship worldwide. So, Eric, a lot of people just asking about if we're going to do certain figures and everything. I think that's the point where we kind of say we're going to call it a night, because we're not going to answer exactly which ones we're going to do or not do. That's something that we have to keep secret for the future.
I'll say to at least one of those questions, yes.
Yes. Okay. Which one? Eric, thank you so much for joining me this evening. You know what? We should do this again very soon. We should be on this show together. I don't know, very soon. You know what? I'll come to you next time.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Okay. So,
and not pre-planned at all, Jeremy.
Not pre-planned at all. Everybody, we'll be back next week. And I don't know what we'll be talking about next week, but tune in and I guarantee you it is going to be a mythic conversation. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.